Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today I have two farmhouse style recipe holder DIYs. So for DIY number one, I'm going to be using this plastic cutting board that I picked up at the Dollar Tree. I'm going to remove the label off of that. I'm also going to be using this piece off of a sign that I purchased at the Dollar Tree. I had used another sign and a different DIY, which I will have a link to the top at the top of this video for that if you'd like to see it. It's a coastal Dollar Tree DIY. I'm also going to be using 3 jumbo popsicle sticks. Actually 2 jingle blocks, because I do have to add a jingle block at the end. Some Gorilla Wood glue, my scissors, my hot glue gun, some paintbrushes, some Waverly chalk paint in the color Truffle, and I originally started off with the nutmeg, and I do one side with that, but I don't really like the color, and some plaster chalk paint and a sanding block. So after I remove the label from the cutting board, I'm going to take that and measure how long I want my jumbo popsicle sticks to be. And I want them to be the same length as the 2 outside edges of the cutting board. So I'm just going to draw a straight line and snip those little end pieces off with my scissors. And then I am going to line them all up and mark the length of the cutting board to get all 3 of those the same size. So as I was saying earlier, I started off with the nutmeg, but it was too dark, so I do end up using warm buff. And you will see that on the opposite side of the cutting board, which will be the front of the recipe holder. So once I get all the jumbo popsicle sticks cut down to size, I'm going to take my Gorilla Wood glue and glue all 3 of these together. And I'm going to use these little cute pink clamps that I picked up at the Dollar Tree to hold these in place until that glue sets. And I'm just going to wipe all that excess glue off and set it to the side so it can dry. Now I am going to take the cutting board and cover it in the truffle colored chalk paint. And my original thought process here was I wanted the top third of it to be white and the bottom 2/3 to be truffle, and I was going to sand the white off of the top part to give it a wood grain look. That's why I painted the entire thing in the color Truffle. But if you're going to go with the two-tone, when I sanded it, it just didn't look the way I wanted it to. So if you're going to go with a two-tone, I would just go ahead and paint the lighter part instead of painting it Truffle and then going over top of that with the light. So here I am just going to mark down the 1/3 from the top of the cutting board, and I'm going to take some painter's tape and put that all the way around so I can create a nice straight edge, and make sure I push all those little creases down so the paint doesn't bleed through. And I'm going to paint the top part of that, like I said, with the plaster colored paint. So I was using my hair dryer to dry the chalk paint, and apparently I did not dry it as well as I thought I did before I put this painter's tape on there. And when I remove that, you will see what I'm talking about. But it is an easy fix, and I'll show you how I fix that. So it does take 2 coats of this plaster colored chalk paint to cover the truffle. But like I said, when I sanded it down, it just wasn't giving me the effect I wanted. So if you're going for the two-tone look, like I said before, I would just go ahead and paint that white instead of not even bothering painting it the darker color to begin with. So it does take 2 coats of this truffle paint and the white to get good coverage on this plastic cutting board. So once I remove the painter's tape, part of the truffle color comes off with the painter's tape because apparently I just did not have it dry enough before I put it on there. So I just take a paintbrush and I go over, and since I already have my nice little crisp line there with the white, I just go over there and paint the truffle color right up against that white line. And like I said, it was an easy fix, but I'll know better next time to make sure it's completely dry. Or maybe it just pulled up because it was on plastic. I don't know. But I go ahead and paint the popsicle sticks and the jingle block and the little piece that I'm going to put on the back that's going to hold the recipe card or the cookbook holder up in the color Truffle. And I'm also going to distress those as well with some white colored paint. Now the little piece that I pulled off of the back of that other sign, the little white piece there, has these little prongs at the top of it, like little spikes, that I just take a little hammer and I tap it into that jingle block. Those little spikes just kind of go down into the little wood on the jingle block and secures it. But this is what's going to be holding the back of the cookbook holder up. So I just use my hairdryer and make sure they're good and dry, and that's how it just pops in there and secures it down. And I do also go ahead and put some hot glue on there once I get that on there, just to make sure it doesn't pop up. So now I'm just going to take some warm buff colored acrylic paint, and I'm going to dry brush the entire cutting board. And I'm also going to use some of that plaster paint to dry brush as well, just trying to give it a distressed wood look. And my original, the other side, you'll see in just a moment, is where I used that nutmeg and I used like a marker to draw out the lines, and it was just too dark. I just didn't like the way it looked. So on this side, after I dry brush it and kind of get the distressed look I want, I'm just going to take my ruler and I'm going to mark it into thirds. So I wanted it to look like it had 3 boards put together. So I'm just going to mark where I want my lines, where I want my lines to be painted. So I just mark the top and the bottom, and I take a paintbrush and my ruler, and I'm using that warm buff and just painting the 2 lines vertically up and down this cutting board to give it that wood grain look, to make it look like it's 3 pieces of wood put together. And then I'm just going to dry brush over top of those so they don't look like 2 sharp painted lines. They just kind of blend in well. And I make sure I get the top piece as well, because you can see that's where I had the marker on the other side. So once I dry brush that all together and kind of blend those lines in pretty well, I'm going to take some E6000 and some hot glue, and I'm going to glue the jingle block to the back of the cutting board. And see, there you can see where those little marks were. It just looked too sharp. So I'm going to secure that in place so that it can set up. And I'm also going to use the E6000 and the hot glue to glue the jumbo popsicle sticks to the front so that can hold the cookbook or your recipe cards. And I'm just going to put that flat to the bottom. And then I'm also going to take the hot glue and run it across the top just to make sure it has a good secure hold. And I do realize that it was sitting back a little bit further than I wanted it to. I wanted it to sit up a little higher. So I take another jingle block and glue that to the bottom of that little slanted piece. And I go ahead and paint that with the truffle paint, as well as paint the hot glue that I had put across the front where the popsicle sticks are. And once I get that all painted, I'm going to take some sizzle rope, just a length of sizzle rope, and I'm going to feed it through the top of the cutting board and just tie a knot. And once I secure the knot, I just cut the ends of the little knot off and just kind of pull the knot to the back of the cutting board so you really don't even see the knot. And this is how it turned out. I think this is so cute, and I hope you enjoyed DIY number 1. So before we go on to DIY number 2, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for watching my video. And if you are new here and you like farmhouse decor, I hope that you will consider hitting that subscribe button and the bell notification so you'll be notified each time I upload a new video. So for DIY number 2, I'm going to be using this tin crockpot recipe that I have that has little recipes on the inside. The same color chalk paint, truffle and plaster. Some brushes, and these cute little stencils that I picked up at the Dollar Tree in the Crafter Square section. So I'm going to remove my recipe cards, and I'm going to paint the outside and the top edges of this tin with the truffle colored chalk paint. And each time I get it on the little silver inside tin part, I go ahead and wipe that off with a napkin because I wanted to leave that the tin color. This covers very well with the chalk paint, so I only needed 1 coat of the truffle colored chalk paint on this tin. So once I get all of that, make sure I get those little creases at the top and the little indentions at the top of the recipe box. I'm going to take my ruler, and I just set it on the bottom ledge there just to kind of give me a straight edge to go across. And I'm going to stencil the word recipe on there. And I found that if you use, because I don't have a sink in my craft room, so I found that if you use wipies, it will wipe right off of that little stencil holder. And then I just take a little napkin and dry that off. And I use my hair dryer to dry the stencils so I can move on to the next one. And I'm going to distress it just like I did in DIY number 1 with the same color chalk paint, giving it a little bit of a rustic look. And I'm going to take this really pretty lace ribbon that I picked up at the Dollar Tree. It has a straight edge on one side and like a jagged edge on the other side. And I'm going to go around the top of the recipe box, leaving the back of that without the lace so that the top can still open. And I put this straight edge at the top with the little jagged edges facing down. And then when I put the lace on the bottom part of it, I put the straight edge on the bottom with the jagged part of the lace facing up. And I just think this gave it a really nice farmhouse look. And I really like how this cute little recipe box turned out. So you'll have to let me know in the comments down below which one of these DIYs is your favorite. And I want to thank you for watching. Please take care, and I will see you next time.